and to shift into more training. And as soon as I made that decision, I got a phone call like a week and a half later from an organization I had spoken to months before that I thought was already on their way to doing something else, and they said, we want you to train all our artists. Now, I set that intention to begin in the first quarter of 2012. Like, I was just going to do the planning in the first quarter of 2012 and launch it in the second quarter of 2012. And I'm already being given a contract, and we are actually doing the training the first week of January in 2012.
Nice.
And so I don't know how to get people to understand. I can share, techniques and things like that, but to really believe and know that it is up to you. We have to take the responsibility to know that. And when you really live in that, you're going to be and do differently. Really are. And it may be imperceptible at first.
Mm.
And then over time, you're going to look up and go, wow, how did I get here? And you may not even notice it, and then you become more conscious of it, and you control it more because you really are the one that controls your life. It's easy, and we can easily say, "Oh, so and so won't let me," or
I agree.
Yeah. But really, that's not true. That's really not true.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say that, someone else controls something or did something to you, it's a lot easier to do that, but then it's a lot harder to change it because you've removed the power from yourself. On the front end, it may be more difficult to, look at something and say, okay, this person may have said this, or this person may have done this, or this situation may have been this way, but, how do I play into this? And what can I do, not necessarily to control, but what is my best space? What is my best space? In this situation, what could be my best space, going forward? Because in there lies the power. You'll ultimately be taking responsibility, but that's a cool place because then you can make the change, and you're not just sitting around, even in your mind, waiting for someone else to do something differently.
So that leads to So you're asking me what are some techniques? I'd say
absolutely.
I wouldn't even call this a technique. I would call it really a mind shift and a self-love you really have to get to. You have to understand that as soon as you do this, people are going to feel, some people will feel like you are rejecting them because maybe they have opinion about it. And you have to really not let that be, not only not be your opinion, you have to let it be theirs. You have to stay clear, what do I want? Okay, so maybe your spouse or your child or your neighbor or your friend at work or your boss doesn't like this, but what do I want? And then write it down. And every day, be grateful. Write down, I know they said, the stars get well known for saying all these things, but this has been around a long time. Be grateful. If you get up every morning, you've got to think about what you're grateful for every day, just like you brush your teeth, or while you're brushing your teeth, or while you're taking your shower, or while you're getting up out of the bed. What am I grateful for? I have an app actually on my phone called Gratitude, and it's actually a gratitude list. And so I do at least 5 every morning. And, you get into it, it becomes 10, 15. If you want, it can be 100. And that you spend, it only takes, it can take 30 seconds or a minute, but to let it become a habit, where you feel like, if you go out of the house, if you brushed your teeth or not, right? You look in a mirror, you're going to know if you did your hair or not, most of us that have hair. And so you want to feel that naked or that unfinished. And if you forget, okay, so right now is the time. What am I grateful for? I'm grateful. So it can be the smallest thing and the biggest thing, because then when it begins, it helps you shift your mind. Those two, to me, would be the most basic kind of people starting from where they are. Write it down and then carry it with you. It's easiest to put on like an index card, 3x5 card, and then you can fold it up because then you can keep it with you and open it during the day. If it's a piece of paper, it gets ripped or you lose it, or, it's just kind of unwieldy. I used to carry around all my my affirmations, and then eventually what happens is it becomes second nature. It becomes embedded because you are so used to doing the gratitude. You're so used to thinking about these things. What do I want? And you know what they are. You find more and more things to want. You find more and more things to be grateful for, and then they just kind of naturally come up in your mind, just like when you have a dream board, people who do that. Part of what happens with visual imagery, and this isn't just from a visual artist perspective, but everyone is actually very visual. Whether you're a visual learner or not, we are all visual, because even the written word is a visual experience for your brain to process through what your eye is seeing. So when you write,
absolutely,
everything we do is visual. Everything we experience, I should say, is visual. Even I can't say I've never been blind, but I imagine blind people probably are the best visualizers because they have to really imagine what a thing looks like from how it smells and feels and tastes. So when, like people who do dream boards, when you get in the habit of really feeling the positive feelings about the images and the goals you've put onto your dream board, what happens is as you go through your day, those images just readily pop up without any exertion on your end. Like you don't consciously think, oh, I'm going to think about my vision board, or my dream board. The images naturally kind of float on the screen of your mind. And because they become then second nature. And when your mind sees them in that way on a regular basis, you instinctively look for them. You look for where they are. Like, okay, I saw that. or you find the pieces over time to support creating that. Because you don't have to think about it. You don't have to look at that index card anymore. Because
I met a guy in college, years ago, my freshman year of college. He was having a difficult time in school. We were all freshmen our first semester. And he started, I wasn't, very familiar with the idea of visualization or anything like that then, but, it kind of jogged my memory. You were talking about keeping the index card or, a small card. He used to keep a fake small-size version of, like, a transcript or whatever in his wallet that was, like, all A's because he wanted to make the dean's list. And, he used to actually keep it in his wallet, this little mini, ridiculous. It was almost ridiculous, but it was funny, when you bring it out, but it made perfect sense. Now it makes perfect sense, as I reflect back on it. He had this fake, mini transcript that was just like all A's, and it was just, I don't know, it was just really interesting because I can imagine now, him having a difficult time in class or something like that and just taking that out and being like, this is what I'm looking at, this is what's happening. And, be interesting to know if he ever, really did it. And I would say probably more than likely he did. That was just interesting to keep something like that close by and how much power it could have.
No question. I remember there was a woman who did what we have called the Vision Board Workshop Experience before. She came to the workshop. She had just moved to Chicago not too long before with her family because her husband was starting graduate school. And she was a teacher. She came up here. She got a job teaching in the Chicago Public Schools and then was laid off when they had to lay off a lot of teachers. And she came to the workshop and did just the most beautiful vision board and very creative. And because she had all these supply, she painted and she cut out paper and she had lots of colors and all these things that we have available. And she put on that, none of the things on her dream board were about teaching. They weren't about this practical thing she had been doing, which she felt had been keeping her from really being the artist she wanted to be. And she told me later, almost everything on her vision board had come into manifestation and at a more accelerated pace. I am amazed. I just saw her a couple of days ago, and I'm just amazed by her having only moved to Chicago after 2 years. All the amazing connections, the art shows she's been in. She did not go back to teaching in the classroom like she had been previously, and now she's training to be a teaching artist in the schools, but in the way she wants to be. And just how everything that she has intended is coming into fruition. Another woman I spoke to who she did our workshop also, she was a single mom, still is, had an infant at the time, and a 3-year-old. I said she was a single mom, right? She wanted to move back to the country she was born in, but she was very afraid. And I take that back, she hadn't had the baby yet. She was pregnant and she had the 3-year-old. And she wanted to move back to her country of origin, but she wasn't sure. She had lived in Chicago so long. She didn't have a job there. She created this dream board about what she wanted to be and do and have. Once she really started to focus in on it, she said every single thing she put on it manifested, including finding a job over the phone, mind you, and the internet in a totally different country, packing up her entire life. She had the baby, taking an infant and a 3-year-old as a single mother, moving back to another country that she hadn't lived since she was 4, and having a fantastic, successful experience. Not to say there weren't challenges along the way, but that's what she intended and manifested. And so because she decided not only she deserved it, was open to receive it, but that she put in the work, getting really connected to that image, to that visual, to that vision that she created on that dream board. And she told me, she said, for a while I just kind of had it there and I wasn't really focusing on it. But then as I did, I began to really connect to it. She said even her family started to talk about how positive she was and how different she seemed. And then the next thing I know, she's gone. I'm waiting to go visit her in the country she moved to. So it's really so simple. It's a decision. And
absolutely.
It may sound like an oversimplification, but it really, the beginning is really a decision and be different than you were yesterday.
And sometimes, just like you said, I love the fact that you said it's a decision, and sometimes these great, grand movements, they just start with the tiniest decisions. I'm going to do better than I did yesterday. I'm not going to try to do better than I did yesterday. I'm going to do better than I did yesterday. I'm going to make more phone calls than I did yesterday. I'm going to be more consistent than I was yesterday. I'm going to be more encouraging. I'm going to be more positive. I am more positive than I was yesterday. Just that bit by bit, before you know it, it's like, I think I read in a book or something like that when it was talking about, maybe it was a quote, it was like, how do you drive, when you're in a car with headlights and you're driving like 200 miles or 300 miles, you can only see, 10 feet in front of you or something like that. You can get the whole way, but you just have to master the bit you can see, bit by bit. You can drive across the country in the dark,
Yeah, what's the saying? How do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time.
Right, there you go. I think I read that one recently, also. And it's really interesting that you're on this call. Recently I've been reading the book, Shaping Your Life, The Power of Creative Imagery by Laurel Jan Fuller. And I've had the book for a while. It's really interesting. I went to my mother's house again and was helping her clean out her garage. She had moved into a new home. And found this book, and apparently it was mine, and I don't even remember buying it, but it was the perfect read right now. And I was like, and I always say, what's better than having the means to buy something you really want? Already owning it and finding it somewhere, and that seems to be the story of my life these days. So, anyway.
Well, can I just say one other thing about that, and that is, please, I don't want anyone who's listening to this call, I don't know if this is available for recording after, but anyone who hears this, I don't want you to ever, or I want you, let me reframe that, I want you to know, because I'm an artist does not mean anything. learned certain processes in art school related to how to tweak and critique and more deeply bring